The stranger I helped on the road turned out to be someone I never expected. I was already stressed and running behind schedule when my engine sputtered like it was choking on its last breath. A sharp warning light flashed red on the dashboard, and the car rolled to a pathetic stop on the side of the highway. Heat shimmered off the asphalt and my phone proudly displayed no service just to make things worse. I grabbed my dead water bottle, stepped out and kicked the tire, the only thing I could take my anger out on. I was stranded, late and alone. Then I heard it, the sharp screech of rubber shredding against pavement. I spun around just in time to see a motorcycle fishtail in a violent zigzag and the rider get thrown off like a rag doll. He hit the ground with a sickening crash that echoed straight through my bones. Everything inside me went cold as I sprinted toward him. The motorcycle lay twisted, metal still ticking hot. The rider groaned, struggling to push himself up. His helmet was scratched and dirt-covered, his jacket ripped and blood smeared across his shoulder. I knelt beside him, asking if he could move. He nodded, but his arm shook so badly I knew something was seriously wrong. He said his brakes locked and he lost control, his voice barely stable. With no signal and no other cars in sight, I pulled his good arm around my shoulder and helped him limp to my broken-down car. He tried to refuse, insisting he didn't want to trouble me, but I wasn't leaving someone to bleed under the sun. He collapsed into the passenger seat, breathing hard, gripping his ribs every time the car rocked. I drove toward a gas station I remembered seeing earlier, slowly trying not to jolt him. His head rested back, jaw clenched, pain carving harsh lines into his face. But even through the exhaustion and blood, he looked familiar. I shoved that thought away. He was a stranger. A stranger who needed help. At the gas station, the attendant rushed over the moment he saw us. Together we got him onto a bench, but he tried standing again, legs wobbling so badly I had to catch him from hitting the ground. He muttered something about being fine. Clearly a lie. Sweat soaked through his shirt and his eyes kept losing focus. The attendant went inside to grab a first aid kit. The stranger fumbled for his wallet with trembling fingers, maybe trying to find insurance ID, anything to prove he didn't want to be a burden. Then I saw his ID card. The world stopped. James Carter. The same James Carter. The man who ruined my brother's life. Years ago, James had gotten behind the wheel drunk after a party. He crashed into Liam's car, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. While my brother was trapped in a hospital bed, James walked away with a fine and a fake apology courtesy of his wealthy family's lawyers. He never once checked in on the boy whose life he destroyed. He simply carried on like nothing happened. I used to imagine seeing him again, screaming at him, making him regret every second of that night. But now he sat here in front of me, weak, hurt, and completely unaware who was helping him. Fate had delivered him to me. He tried to stand again and nearly collapsed. The attendant practically forced him back into the seat and told me we needed to call an ambulance since he looked like he could pass out at any second. The stranger finally agreed, pride clearly lost in the fight. While the attendant called emergency services, I stood a few steps back, shock and fury turning my veins into ice and fire at the same time. I watched James Carter, the man who stole my brother's future, groan in pain, and instead of feeling pity, I felt satisfaction bubbling into a dangerous smile I quickly hid. The ambulance arrived fast. Paramedics strapped him to a stretcher. He looked right at me and thanked me again, saying something about how I saved him. Saved him. He didn't remember me at all. To him, I was just another nameless face in his perfect world. The doors shut and the sirens screamed away into the distance. I stood still, breathing uneven, hands shaking, not from fear but from rage. Liam who would never run again. Liam who still cried sometimes when he thought no one heard. Liam who laughed less every year because of what this man did. And now that man needed help. He needed someone. He needed me. A twisted, wicked sort of justice. I called a rideshare since my car was useless. My leg bounced wildly as the car rushed me toward the hospital. I replayed everything. The courtroom, the judge who practically apologized to James for the inconvenience, the smirk he wore walking out free, the way his father shook his hand like he won something. Not this time. Inside the hospital lobby, I approached the nurse's desk and asked about the motorcycle accident patient. He asked if I was family. I said I was the one who found him. She said his injuries looked serious but not life-threatening, fractured ribs, a damaged shoulder, some internal bruising. Of course. Of course he'd survive. He always survived. The nurse asked if he had someone to call. I shrugged, pretending ignorance. I wasn't done. Not until he knew exactly who brought him here. Not until everything he buried came back to haunt him. I sat where I could see down the hall, waiting, watching every medical staff member walk past, waiting to hear his room number. Finally, a doctor led him into room 14. I stood outside the doorway, heart pounding like a war drum. I could see him through the small window, lying in the hospital bed, eyes closed, bandages wrapping his shoulder and ribs. Vulnerable. Exposed. In pain. Good. I stepped inside quietly. My shoes barely touched the floor. I stood at the end of the bed, arms crossed, staring at the man who destroyed so much. He opened his eyes slowly, confusion flickering across his face. He tried to place my face, and I knew the moment he realized I wasn't just another good Samaritan. His eyes widened. Recognition shot through him like lightning. Fear followed right after. His lips parted like he was going to speak, but I didn't let him. I just smiled. Told. His breathing hitched, panic replacing pain. He remembered. He remembered the courtroom. My family's broken faces. Liam's wheelchair. And now he knew exactly who was standing over him, and that he owed me everything he had left. I leaned forward enough that he couldn't look away from me. Payback wasn't coming. Payback was already here. And I wasn't finished. James stared at me like I was the haunting ghost of his past, and he wasn't wrong. The panic rising in his eyes was so familiar. Not for me specifically, but for consequences. He wasn't used to feeling powerless. He wasn't used to me being the one standing tall. I pulled a chair close to his hospital bed and sat without breaking eye contact. The silence between us felt like a loaded gun. He tried whispering my name, but his voice cracked. He asked what I was doing there. He asked if Liam was okay. He said he always wondered what happened. I didn't answer. I didn't need to speak. Just watching him squirm was enough. His heartbeat monitor beeped faster. The nurse walked in to check on him, but he forced a smile and waved her away, trying to hide his fear, the same way he hid everything else. Once we were alone again, he attempted to tell me he was sorry for what happened. He claimed it was an accident. He said he wished he could change things. Words. Excuses. Nothing new. He pressed a hand against his ribs, grimacing, and I leaned forward slightly, enough for him to know I was studying every ounce of his weakness. He wasn't in control anymore. And he knew it. I took his phone from the bedside table. He asked what I was doing. His voice wasn't confident. It was trembling. I scrolled through contacts. His lawyer, his father, business associates. No friends. Interesting. Then I found it. A text from someone saved as Dad. Instead of affection, the message was cold. We can't afford another scandal. Call me only when you're discharged. That explained everything about James and who he became. I asked him, calmly, if Dad was coming. He shook his head. He said his father didn't see injuries as a worthwhile interruption. Even better. This time, no powerful daddy would walk into a courtroom and rewrite fate. I placed the phone back down and stood up. James tried reaching for my arm, begging me not to leave him alone. I brushed his hand off and stepped into the hallway. I went straight to the nurse's station. I told them James had no family nearby. I told them I was his emergency contact. They believed me. Desperate patients didn't exactly whip out IDs for verification. They said he would be discharged in a couple of days, but he'd be unable to manage daily tasks by himself. He would require help, someone to assist him while he healed. They asked if I could take responsibility. I smiled and said yes. James' eyes widened when I returned with a clipboard of paperwork. He attempted to tell me that wasn't necessary. He said he didn't want to burden me. He tried insisting he would figure something out. I reminded him I found him on the road when he couldn't even stand. He shut up. For the next 2 days I stayed near him, always watching, never comforting. Nurses assumed I was a caring friend. James knew I was his warden. Whenever he tried to start a conversation about the past, I would simply stand and walk away. Silence became my sharpest weapon. On the day of discharge, the nurse handed me a list of instructions. James needed medication, rest, and supervision. I nodded and signed every line. When I wheeled him out through the double doors and into the bright sunlight, he looked smaller somehow, like the world finally stopped bending for him. A rideshare pulled up and I loaded him into the back seat. The driver didn't care who we were, just another pickup. James asked quietly where we were going. I told him, my home. His breath caught in his throat. My home, the same place where my brother learned how to breathe after they removed the ventilator. The same place where Liam practiced moving lifeless legs, fighting tears every time they refused to obey him. I wasn't bringing James there for mercy. I was bringing him there for the truth. When we arrived, I helped him out of the car. He winced with every step. Inside, the living room was neat and full of medical equipment, reminders of the endless therapy Liam went through. James looked around, recognizing the devices instantly. His face drained pale. Good. I told him to sit on the couch while I prepared his pain meds. He tried to say he wanted to talk, but I cut him off with a single look. He shut up again. Every movement he made caused pain. Every breath reminded him that he wasn't above suffering. And I made sure he knew it wasn't even close to what he deserved. When he tried to stand up on his own, he almost collapsed. I let him struggle before giving just enough support to keep him from hitting the floor. Pride was a luxury he no longer had. The first night he could barely sleep, haunted by guilt and fear. I heard him wheezing through the walls like his breath was trying to escape his conscience. The next morning I told him he needed to practice walking with his injured ribs, and I watched him nearly buckle with each step. He gritted his teeth and pushed through, desperate to prove something. But there was nothing he could prove here. Each time he lost his balance, I caught him, not gently. Enough to stop him from falling, but rough enough that pain shot through him like electricity. He asked why I was doing this. He said he wanted to make things right. He said he would do anything. I finally spoke. I told him the truth. Liam wakes up in pain every single day. Liam's dreams died in that crash. Liam spent years wondering why justice protected the one who harmed him. James didn't argue. He just cried. Silent tears he tried to hide. Good. Later I recorded a video. My phone pointed at him while he sat broken in my living room. I told him to explain what he did. To tell the truth, he hid behind lawyers and money. He stared into the camera, trembling. He confessed everything. He said his name. He said Liam's name. He said he ruined a life and walked free. When he finished, he looked at me at the phone, like fear itself was staring back. He asked what I planned to do with the video. I said nothing. I just walked away. Every day I reminded him of the consequences he escaped. Every day he relived guilt like a punishment. Every day he looked smaller, weaker, more honest. Then came the day his father finally called, asking if the scandal was contained. Asking if he signed the settlement offer. Asking if everything was handled. James looked at me, and for the first time in his life he chose the right thing. He told his father no. He said he would no longer hide. He said it was time to pay for what he did. He ended the call with shaking hands. My chest tightened, not with forgiveness but with certainty. He wasn't lying. He gave me a signed confession. He recorded an apology for Liam. He asked what I needed from him to give my brother dignity again. He didn't ask for mercy. He asked for justice. A week later the police came. James stood at the door with his bag packed. His ribs still healing, his shoulder still stiff. But he didn't run. He turned to me and said he understood if I never spoke to him again. Then he walked out and surrendered willingly. And for the first time since the accident, Liam smiled, knowing karma finally delivered what the court didn't. James lost his freedom. James lost his protection. James lost the life he never deserved. And I didn't need to lift a finger. Fate handed me the moment. I simply didn't waste it.